Okay, good afternoon. I get the pleasure, I think there's a theme developing here around breaking the bottlenecks around manufacturing. I'm going to use slightly different nomenclature I'm going to talk about industrializing cell therapy manufacturing and taking from the basis that, we're not necessarily doing anything wrong right now, that it's got us to where we needed to be, but that times are changing, and in terms of the success of cell gene therapies in the clinic so far, we've got approvals that are now necessitating that we think about scale. So I think we all in the industry knew that a cliff edge in manufacture was approaching. I think for some of us in the field, this has happened a little bit sooner than potentially we thought. The reason being behind that is that some of the therapies are proven better in the clinic than I think that we anticipated, and I think that we all thought the time for scale was coming with solid tumors, which undoubtedly it is, but I think with some of the approvals that were given in what I think is a landmark year in 2023, 2024, we have some significant products, different products, CRISPR-edited stem cells, TILs, first TCR, T-cell product, but the indications there, we're talking about beta thalassemia, sickle cell disease, these are not small indications. You add to that what the multiple myeloma CAR-T products have achieved in CARVYKTI and Abecma, coming down from 4th and 5th line treatment down to 2nd and 3rd line treatment. We're talking a log change in production requirements from 3,000-4,000 patients a year to 30,000-40,000 patients a year. We've got signpost products for solid tumors, and I would add into that we probably need to be thinking about a 10 times plus scale increase in what we're doing in production right now. And a little warning for the future that we have autoimmune progressing incredibly well through the clinics, and that's a different scale of patient production or product production required once again. So industrial scale manufacturing is required now. The next 2 to 3 years are going to be exciting, nerve-wracking. We've got a lot to do, but they're going to prove pivotal. So where are we now in manufacturing? I think probably you've seen lots of talks in these sessions. You've seen the technologies outside in the exhibition. Right now we have islands of automation, processes that are semi-automated, but still require people to bring materials to those instruments and devices, to have personnel running those instruments and devices, and data input is often manual or manually entered into digital solutions, and the whole throughput is run through people. 40% of COGS driven by labor, we know that. I would also add to that that the facilities required in the manufacturing space are another sizable chunk of that. So not much standardization between processes, with whole processes, and to move away from this a kind of approach up to now has been seen as too risky, which really indicates our approach at Cellular Origins, which I'll detail in a moment. Oh. Okay. I won't labor on here, but some dystopian future headlines around what we mustn't let manufacture these therapies that have been successful in gaining approval. We can't be seeing headlines where we're seeing about patient waiting lists. We can't be retrospectively looking back in the future and thinking what we should have done in cell and gene therapy, what we couldn't do. So industrialization is the answer. What does that mean? Well, I'm using the word, even today, we've heard a lot about automation, but it can be a woolly term these days. We all mean different things when we say the word automation. So we prefer to lean towards industrialization. Industrialization used in many other industries. We're not reinventing the wheel here, and in fact, a lot of what we're doing at Cellular Origins is proven in other industries already, whether that be microchip manufacturing, smart warehousing, food industry, automotive industry is the big parallel that's often drawn up. What we mean by industrialization is standardization, roboticization. I'm pretty sure I've made that word up, but I'm going to use it. Digitalization. All this has got to be done with flexibility to enable lots of different processes, different unit operations. And when we build this, we need production security, continuity, and redundancy in mind. I say all this so that I can flash up an image of what we mean by industrialization. what those images mean, I'll go into now. So at Cellular Origins, we're building an industrial automation platform for scaling the therapies and the processes that we're utilizing now, but utilizing with people involved. The 4 pillars of our technology, start from the middle, are mobile robotics. So our mobile robotics and the workstations, the unit operation workstations that are arranged in a facility. I'll show you a schematic in a moment. Whatever your facility is. So we're automating your process and we're automating your facility. Our integrated mobile robots are technology, again, taken from other industries, autonomous mobile robot basis, with such technology used in smart warehouses, self-drive cars, and we've integrated into that the robotic arm technology used already in GMP environments, so cleanable and appropriate for not shedding too many particulates into a GMP space. And then our proprietary technology, as you can see on the left, there's one example of our end effectors for handling consumables, handling devices, and being able to make sterile connections. We've automated sterile welding that's inboard on our mobile robotics. And with that way, we can take materials and the product all the way from their entry into the clean room to the manufacturing process through all their different unit operations, connecting them as they go along, all the way through to the end product. And on the right-hand side, an important aspect of what we do is we're automating on, around, and through unit operation technologies that are already used out in the field right now, and importantly, have already been used in companies' production through their clinical manufacturing up to approval and past approval, only now through scale. With us being able to implement this automation with a minimal amount of process change, we can now give us an option for scaling. Busy slide, and I won't linger on it, but in terms of what we need to bring with this full automation, maximum amount of standardization, I think as we scale, becomes increasingly important. Variability will multiply as the production multiplies. Maximum space efficiency was talked about in the earlier session. Our CEO, Edwin Stone, was talking with cell and gene therapy catapult, Stephen Ward. Space efficiency is key. Otherwise, we're going to be producing more products in more space with a lot more people. Cost efficiency is taken as read, and we need to do this with a minimum amount of regulatory risk. So can we reduce the personnel requirement by 90%? We're absolutely showing that we can at the moment. Wanted to flick up a few examples of elements of our technology. I mentioned about sterile welding. This is our end effector that sits on the end of the robotic arm, and you'll notice that this is fairly familiar to what you would have done in the space. So in automating this and making it mobile around through the whole process and through the whole facility, we can make sterile connections, we can control and maintain fluid pathways all the way through that process. And not just one process, but many at the same time. Every digital second of this product journey through manufacturing is recorded for QC or process optimization purposes. Our mobile robotics I've already touched on. Our belief is this is the maximum amount of space utility, and it was referenced and talked about earlier in a session, but our first installation, external from what we're doing at Cellular Origins, was at the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, our strategic partners in this, and right there now is our constellation system with our integrated mobile robot. It's a fairly simple process as it moves G-Rex bioincubators through a process into input, into the Thermo Fisher incubators, and then out again. And we're going to build on the functionality of that system as we go through the rest of this year, bringing sterile connection and fluid transfer into that as well. Slight pause for effect. Space utility I mentioned. It won't escape a lot of you that there are other approaches to robotics in which they're contained within pods. Well, I think if you employ mobile robotics, the reason we did this, one of few reasons we did this is we can make better utility of space. So in and between all of the gray bars are unit operation workstations. The robotics can move in and around each of those. You can see if you're looking at more of a pod structure to your facility, you actually have space around those pods that isn't particularly utilized. That's one of many advantages, I think, to us being able to use mobile robotics and very flexible, configurable workstations. And here's a visual of what a facility might look like that we put together with a partner we're working with at the moment. This is a simple CAR-T process. You can see that you'd have a certain number of mobile robotics in there, moving the product and all the materials between the workstations, the unit operations within there. Lastly, on the system itself, an important element of how we're doing this. I mentioned before that we're automating on and around and integrating devices and technologies that are already being used in the field. So we're working with some of the leaders in the space with Cytiva, Fresenius, Thermo, Scale Ready on technologies that have already serve their purposes for therapy developers that have gone through clinical manufacturing all the way up to near approval or during approval and post-approval. We're merely looking to make the minimal amount of change around the devices, around the consumables, but automate, basically replace the operators, the human operators that are required with robotic operators. So another little sort of show and tell of some of our robotics in development. This is a Fresenius Q device, and here you probably see in the top right-hand screen, this is probably the best evidence I've got of our digital integration, and software integration is actually the predominance, the amount of work we have to do. We are integrating into the software of this device, and we can push commands in, and this is it flashing through the initiation of the device. Then the robotics will kick in and install the tubing sets. You'll notice it's not normal Q tubing set, except actually it is. We've just mounted it on a frame. We've not changed that tubing set, just enabled the robotics to be able to handle it the same way every time. So that'll be installed physically by the robotics. That'll actually make the fluid connections for all the buffer, media, etc., reagents, and so on. And it will run through that process on a device that before was not able to be operated remotely or in another platform. So our digital platform, you can operate devices like this from different companies from the same software. Last note on the software, so it's a bit of a complicated schematic, but enough to say, as I mentioned before, with our partners, we can automate and we can robotically operate each of those unit operation devices. So we're integrating downwards into those devices. We're pulling data from them, of course, but the operation of them is what's taken a lot of work recently. But we're also then, into our software layer, we can integrate upwards. So whether you're using a specific EBMR or an MES or into your LIMS system, we can integrate into the digital solutions that you already have in and around your facility. Had some interesting work with a consultancy company that came to us recently. Happy to discuss details afterwards for anyone who wants to know, but one of the headlines was they agnostically looked at our system, and the way that robotic operation of these facilities came out was much better utility of space. Good. And we were very pleased with the headline that, of course, our business model, there's an initial outlay of hardware. Actually, we'll work with you to only implement robotics when you require it, when you need to scale out. But in that initial layout of hardware, actually the payback on that return of investment on a product output of 10,000 products a year is less than a year. Yeah, so I mentioned this briefly, but we're working with companies at that latter end of their development of their products. Let's say from the beginning of Pivotal or halfway through Pivotal on towards their BLAs, and then when they really have their requirements for scale in their sites and need to start phasing it up, then we can look at integrating their process into our robotics. And this is how we work with you. So first step would be we'd look at your process, the technology you're using with it, we'd map that out. we'd put an initial appraisal together around, how automatable each of those processes are, each of those devices and technologies, and we'd assess those that we've already integrated, and also the timelines that would be required for us to integrate anything we haven't up to that point integrated. Of course, we're adding to our portfolio of technology integrations month by month. We then look at your existing facility or your facility design, and we'll be able to map that out with you as well. And we'd look at what kind of output you require per meter squared or foot squared, and the optimal layout. So if you're looking at cell washing, incubation, fill and finish, we'd look at the right ratios of unit operation workstations compared to each other for the maximum amount of output. Yeah, we'd also look at what redundancy and production security you require, and we'd help you with your model for return on investment on that too. And it doesn't have to be an all-in-one. We're often de-risking approaches, automation approaches with the clients we're talking to, and we can stage that implementation of automation if that's required, either part of your process, or we can scale to a non-GMP version first and then move that on to a GMP version. And we can look at production output as well as a scaling, de-risking strategy too. So maybe you might want to just look at 1,000 product a year facility to begin with, and then on to move that on and scale that out to a 10,000, 50,000 plus product a year facility. Just flashing up more examples because I like the pictures, and I can leave it there.
That concludes all the company presentations for today. As a reminder, the networking bash will be from 6 to 8 p.m. on the outside terrace on the lobby level. We will resume company presentations tomorrow morning. So with that being said, have an excellent evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.